Our friend Gabe Kaminsky, a great investigative reporter with the Free Press. How are you, Gabe?
Mark, great to be with you.
You're also a brave young man. Young, I guess. What are you, in your 20s or 30s? I don't know. But at any event, doesn't really matter. Gabe, you've written a piece on a guy called Little Adolf. That would be Nick Fuentes. And he's probably proud of the nickname I give him anyway. And tell us what you're revealing in this piece that we should know as a nation.
Yeah, thanks again for having me, Mark. I think what's really notable is, so Nick Fuentes, white nationalist, anti-Semitic podcaster, he goes on Tucker Carlson's show 3 weeks ago. And, you know, that's an episode that racked up millions of views and has since prompted a significant amount of infighting on the right. And now Nick Fuentes has sort of announced that a 501c4 nonprofit group that he runs, which means that's a type of organization registered with the IRS, that's tax exempt, that can act more politically and potentially get involved more in elections than your sort of standard foundation or nonprofit charity. He announced that that group is going to be looking at candidates running in the 2026 midterms to, as he said, quote, map out the patronage networks of the Israel First lobby. And he says, we'll, quote, have all the intellectual firepower, production quality of all the other big names of the conservative movement. Now, obviously, that's quite a big statement, or prediction from him, rather. Is that true? We do not know. But what is notable, right, is that he is saying essentially to his pretty large base. I mean, his videos get millions of views on Rumble. And he's saying that he's going to try to get involved in the elections. I understand pornography
gets a lot of views too. You know, I got it. That doesn't mean, yeah,
that's
go ahead.
True. And yeah, and so look, what our story is kind of just trying to introduce readers a little bit to, I mean, certainly we mentioned, you know, the sort of just blatantly racist or anti-Semitic things this person has said. He's compared Holocaust victims to cookies in an oven. He said that black people need to be imprisoned for the most part. He's called for yourself to be deported. Now, this is what we sort of walk through in our story, is that this foundation, it's called the America First Foundation, and it's based in Chicago, where Nick Fuentes lives. Interestingly, it had sort of sparse finances last year. In other words, it was actually in the red. It spent far more than it actually has in assets, but now he's sort of on this fundraising spree. And so I talked to people, White House officials. We quote Tucker Carlson in this story, who says that he, quote, does not know what Fuentes is capable of or what role he will play going forward. But he says, surprisingly, calling people Nazis doesn't fix the problem. And that's a sentiment that I think we quoted the Republican Jewish Coalition, or even just other White House officials who
I'm a little confused by that Carlson comment, though, Gabe. The guy basically calls himself a Nazi. So what does he mean So what does he mean when he says by calling him Nazi doesn't really... What do you call him?
Yeah, I think as far as what Tucker is saying is he seems to be obfuscating on what White House officials told us, which is that they view Nick Fuentes as someone who should not have a future in the Republican Party, someone who is trying to subvert the interests of the broader voter base. One White House official told us, quote, there's no evidence that Nick Fuentes is capable of institution building. He doesn't have the disposition. He doesn't live in D.C., and he doesn't know very many people. He's very good at tearing stuff down, though. That's a sentiment that I would actually point out one notable quote that was given to us by a Democrat named James Carville, prominent Democratic strategist. And Carville told me, he said, quote, you understand this is too much expletive effing fun for a Democrat, right? And I think that's a really notable quote from Carville, because essentially what he's saying is that this sort of attempt to subvert the Republican Party by a white nationalist is pretty advantageous potentially to Democrats in the midterms, or even looking to 2028. It's kind of ammo for them to say, hey, this is a party that is in sort of significant disarray right now.
I want to dig a little deeper with you, Gabe. Gabe Kaminsky at the Free Press. We'll be right back. We're coming upon the 250th birthday of the United States, and it has me thinking, what will America look like 250 years from now? My friends at the Heritage Foundation want to know what you think. What policies should America prioritize? What principles should carry us into the decades ahead? As America enters a new golden age, Heritage recognizes that this is the time to take stock and to be intentional about how we shape the future of America. And they can't do it without your input. So please go to heritage.org/LEVIN and let them know what you think is important. Without patriots like you stepping up and speaking up for what you believe in, America as we know it can't survive for another 250 years. Please go to heritage.org/Levin, heritage.org/LEVIN. Take the survey on America's future. This survey takes less than 10 minutes to complete, but it is critical for making sure that the America we pass on to future generations is an America we're proud of. Go to heritage.org/Levin today. That's heritage.org/LEVIN. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation. Great investigative reporter for the Free Press, Gabe Kaminsky. Hey, Gabe, here's my question to you. This Fuentes, he's not alone. You got Tucker Carlson, you've got Bannon, you've got Owens, you've got their cheerleaders with Megyn Kelly and so forth. If they rule the roost or win the day or even have an influence over 3, 4, 5% of the vote in the Republican Party in a 50-50 nation, they could destroy MAGA, they can elect the Democrats, and they can ensure that in 2028 we have a Democrat president. No, it doesn't take much.
Well, I think that's the contention of actually, as far as my reporting, that's certainly what Democrats are beginning to believe, that this is sort of an issue that could be really advantageous for them to keep harping on. The fact that there are loud voices on the right who are espousing views that the president himself and people the closest to the president have not. And for our story, we what
happened there?
President Trump.
Okay, we lost about 5 seconds there. And for your story, start right there. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mark. For our story, we also spoke to a longtime advisor to President Trump, and this individual told us, they said, quote, "Fuentes is literally one of the most vile racists in the country," but they more notably told us that they believe that any political candidates who align themselves with Nick Fuentes' organization in the midterms will be effectively dooming their campaigns, because it does seem to believe that institutional Republican groups, organizations like the NRSC or the NRCC, which work to elect House Republicans and Senate Republicans, that they are not going to be aligning themselves with this organization. And so I think you're right. Like there basically are significant questions about, these major podcasters who are espousing views that the president himself has not aligned himself with. How is that going to impact MAGA? And I don't know the answer to that question, but I think that's really the question right now.
Let me ask you a sort of a business model question. If you're a podcaster, the goal is to attract as many people as you can. There's thousands of podcasters, and they look at their charts every month. Where am I on the chart? I'm in the top 10, I'm in the top 5, I'm in the top 20, and so forth. So they play this game that's really a short-term game, month by month by month, and those algorithms determine how much money they're actually able to make, how many hits they get. And this is able to be monitored really every minute of the day. So I find they're becoming more and more extreme, more and more outrageous. They want to get in all these fights, stir the pot, and so forth and so on. So while it's great to have this sort of competition of these different platforms and so forth and so on, in so many ways it's created, I think, really a thuggish, nasty atmosphere. Obviously not all the podcasters. So you find when you listen to a Tucker Carlson or a Megyn Kelly or an Owens or a Bannon, they don't have a whole lot to offer. To be perfectly honest with you, they're not particularly profound or scholarly or knowledgeable or in anything or entertaining. But man, if they could stir the pot, push the conspiracies, the Third Reich, yes, Churchill, no, that sort of stuff. And they don't all do that, but some of them do. I feel this is part of the disease, the poison that we're experiencing. Does that make sense?
I think that's an interesting point because look at the right, the farthest extremes to the right or the left. There's a guy on the left named Hassan Piker who has explicitly basically aligned himself with terrorists, and that is someone who has gained a lot of popularity on the internet, at least among young progressives. And on the flip side of this, you have people who have been testing the limits of sort of, and just asking questions, they say, or sort of testing the limits of sort of like rational discourse. And that is, they sort of, these people obviously, are incentivized by clicks, and rage bait on the internet sells very well. And so I think the questions that are going to be raised is, yes, like, can the big question, I think, another question that just comes to me is like, the right in 2020 and 2021 was very vocal in aligning themselves with this sort of viewpoint that the internet was overly censorious. And I've reported a lot about ways that platforms have demonetized conservatives. Mm-hmm. And in response to that now, Elon Musk has created a platform that is sort of the exact opposite of that essentially you go on Twitter any given day now and you're seeing pornography, you're seeing content that is openly anti-Semitic, openly racist, content that there seemingly could be a conversation about, right? Like, should this be within the bounds of normal people just logging on to see these things? That's not to say, I'm saying, all the internet should return to the way it was. I don't know. It's not my job to answer that question, but it seems like there's now this reignited question, at least that, more traditional conservative, conservative podcasters or conservative voices are thinking, which is, did we go in the exact radical opposite direction to open the floodgates to allow for this discourse to proliferate on the internet that maybe is promoting toxicity and maybe on both sides is not helpful to, the national discourse.
But it seems to be the business model. The business model is, let's not have a rational discussion or debate, or what. Let us delve into the pool of the poison. I think that's true. And the damage is a lot of young people who are not being taught American history in our schools, a lot of young people who think the world began today. They start listening to these people, and the more they hear of them, and the less there's pushback from really the body politic, or the churches and the synagogues, or just the good people out there, the more this becomes acceptable, I think. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think, again, this takes it back to really Nick Fuentes, which is that this is someone who has been around now. I mean, he's 27 years old, which is young, but he's been around now being a sort of pundit and online podcaster for, I believe, probably about... Is someone who now was given a really significant platform to go on Tucker Carlson's show. Tucker has a very large audience.
Oh, he had dinner with him before, so the whole thing was kind of was kind of planned out.
And this introduced Nick Fuentes to lots of people, and it sort of has elevated him to an extent where now, and to be clear, that interview between Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes, people host controversial people for interviews. I mean, the job of a journalist or a pundit, is a lot of times you talk to people, and I certainly do, that you don't agree with, but you hear what they have to say. I think the critique of that interview that at least seems to be very prominent on the right is that it felt like less of an, sort of substantive interview than a platform for Nick Fuentes to talk about what he calls global Jewry. There was not really much pushback on those views. And that has now led to Fuentes announcing this organization that he is aiming to fundraise with. He's fundraising online, we found, through a fundraising platform called SP Donate. It's a 501c3 charity that is Nick Fuentes' group is raising money through a credit card, cryptocurrency. We don't know how much people are donating. I will say, this is something I found yesterday. I located the names of two foundations that have actually previously donated to Nick Fuentes' group. One is called the Dazio Gutierrez Family Foundation. It's run by an individual named Joe Gutierrez, who is the CEO of a energy company called Novi Midstream in Houston, Texas. And I found the name of another foundation that also previously, in the most recent fiscal year, granted money to Nick Fuentes' group. It's called the Peter Luce Foundation. I was not able to find much information about who funds that or who's behind it, but those two foundations donating, I don't know a whole lot about them, but it is notable, and I think there, could be some more reporting to do as far as to understand who is going to be opening their pockets to this group and how much are they really going to be given for what exact cause.
Do you think foreign countries or billionaires, domestic billionaires, dark money might flow into this for the very purpose of creating mayhem in our country? And he's just the latest, knucklehead that they want to get behind, and the latest cause they want to get behind. They'll get behind Students for Palestine, for Justice in Palestine. They'll get behind organizations like that. They'll get behind this guy Fuentes. They'll push Carlson. They'll push these people just because they want to create as much havoc as possible. Is that possible?
So one thing I would note, it is legal under federal law for 501c4 nonprofits to accept donations from foreign donors. That said, there is no evidence that this group has taken foreign money. I haven't found that. But generally speaking, right, because this group is registered under this section of the tax code,
we keep getting
as far as us to be able to find its donors. And so 501c4s do not disclose their actual donors to the IRS, which makes it very difficult to trace that money stream. However, some foundations may disclose on their own tax documents donating to groups like this. So it can be difficult to track that money. And again, 501c4s are a type of nonprofit that can engage in unlimited political lobbying. And they also actually can spend money on ads to support or oppose candidates in elections, which means that any donations that go to Nick Fuentes' group could be used for electoral activity. And I think that's why this is sort of notable, is that this could be a real attempt to get involved in some manner in elections. And there already are some lawmakers who, have not explicitly taken steps to denounce Nick Fuentes or not really.
Well, what do you make of that? What do you make of people, some of them prominent, who have not done that? I mean, doesn't that seem a little odd to you? Because at some point, I assume they're going to be confronted with it and asked where they stand with this Carlson and Fuentes and Kelly and Owens and all the rest of them.
One thing that's really notable to me, and this is a little bit older, but in 2022, Nick Fuentes' nonprofit, they hosted Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Georgia congresswoman, at their conference. And a year earlier, they hosted Arizona Congressman Paul Gosar. He gave a keynote speech. But I mention that in the sense that there are lawmakers like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie, another congressman who has aligned himself as pretty staunchly anti-Trump, and the president has been speaking out against Thomas Massie lately and Marjorie Taylor Greene. These are people that have aligned themselves more with the Tucker wing of the party, and so that sort of demonstrates.
But honestly, what is this? What is this Tucker wing of the party? I think he's on his own wing. I think they are out to destroy the party, replace the party. I think that's the whole game plan: stir the pot and make tons of money as well. Gabe, we're going to have to have you back, but I have a hard break. Your article is fantastic. I recommend it to everybody. I've posted it, or if I haven't, Mr. Producer, let's make sure we do. And you folks are doing great work over there. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Mark. I always really appreciate it.
Take care of yourself, man.